Well, hello there, my lovely. Today I'm going to share with you why trying harder to prove yourself is the worst thing that you can do. Just think about it. When you are trying harder, particularly at work, it leads to more overwhelm, it leads to longer hours, and it actually will raise your cortisol levels because you're overworking, you're doing more to try and prove yourself. So in today's live, we're going to go through the consequences of trying harder and the three things that you must do to prove yourself without trying harder. For those that don't know me, I'm Sue-Ann Higgins, and I help women leaders over 40 who work in a male-dominated environment expand their influence and impact by helping them hop off the try harder cycle. So let's get into why trying harder is the worst thing that you can do. You'll be familiar with the sketchnoting that I do by now, and I'm going to map this out for you and give you some strategies along the way to help solve this try harder or help you get off this try harder cycle. So looking again at the quiet leader within navigator, the whole purpose of hopping off the try harder cycle is to move from being that exhausted leader to an energized leader who's engaging and empowering. The problem is that when we are trying harder, there's a few issues that it causes. And one of those is the paradox of overworking. As I mentioned just a short time ago, is that trying harder often ends up raising your cortisol levels. And if you've, in the last few weeks, worked back at work for at 3 or more times, or carried out more work on the weekends just so that you can get on top of the work, then that's an indicator that you've fallen into the try harder trap. The other problem with the trying harder to prove yourself is that it ends up helping you or guiding you to fall into the perfectionism trap, or worse still, the procrastination trap. So these traps are part of the change, the VUCA life change area. So let me just take you through that now. In the VUCA life change area, you've got a few different traps that people typically fall into. And the first one is the indecision trap. So if you're been working many hours and overworking, then often what ends up happening is that your brain comes to what's called an impasse. It can no longer clearly make decisions. And the reason why it does that is because of the raised cortisol levels. Similarly, you've got the perfectionism trap, where everything has to be perfect. And the problem with trying to get everything perfect is that it actually reinforces the self-sabotaging trap of imposter syndrome. Because as you start trying to be perfect and you let yourself down because no one can sustain that level of energy and concentration over time. You start having the not good enough trifecta. I don't know enough, I don't give enough, or I'm not good enough, which leads to imposter syndrome. The other thing that overworking does is that over time, when you sustain that overworking time and time again, because you're trying harder to prove yourself, you fall into I call the overworking trap the busyness trap. And that's a self-sabotaging trap. So as you can see, we've got a few change traps: indecision, perfectionism, procrastination, and in the self-sabotaging traps down below, you've got the imposter syndrome and the busyness trap. And possibly, just quite simply, the self-doubt trap, because as you're working harder to prove yourself, you're thinking that possibly you're not good enough, or you got that job or that promotion or that work because of other reasons other than your talent. The thing that I've noticed a lot with my coaching clients around perfectionism and procrastination, self-doubt and imposter syndrome is that it ends up kind of being a self-fulfilling prophecy, where we hop into that vicious cycle of trying harder and to prove ourselves, particularly if you've been in a male-dominated environment all the time. The pattern interrupter on how to hop off these cycles, firstly, is there's three things that you can do immediately to help hop off of these cycles. And the first one is to identify what your vital few are. So if you want to become that energized leader, let's put this in another color so that you can clearly see it. The first thing that you can do is, one, determine what your vital few are. So vital few is really the top 3 to 5 things that take 20% of your time, but give you 80% of the impact. And a way to come up with what your vital few are at work is to look at your job description, or look at the things that your line manager, your senior manager, is holding you accountable for. That's your vital few, so focus on that. The thing about people that are overworked and that are trying hard to prove themselves, typically what happens is we are the soldiers, the people that get stuff done, right? And the senior leaders give actions and activities and tasks to people that are busy because they know that they get stuff done. However, what if you really are in tune with what your vital few are, the things that give you the greatest impact and influence in your job role, then it's easier to start setting boundaries for yourself. And that's the second strategy that I want to encourage you to do. So it's setting boundaries. And the boundaries are the boundaries you put in place for you. I'm going to put the word self boundaries here. So self boundaries are the boundaries that you personally are committed to doing and sticking to. And, one of the simplest ways of setting that boundary is determining how many days a week you're prepared to work extra hours. How many hours are you prepared to do on the weekend, if any? Setting those boundaries on how much you work will help start getting some work-life harmony, or you may know it as work-life balance, back. And sticking to those boundaries and saying, okay, I do need to, I like to prepare work on Sundays. So I do work a little bit on the weekends, but the important thing is to determine whether it's 1 or 2 hours that you're prepared to do, and set a timer and just do that. Because Parkinson's law states that the effort will fill the time that you give it. So if you haven't given any time, it will take you longer to complete the activity. The third strategy that you can use to help you get off of this try harder cycle is, this shouldn't be a surprise, set boundaries for others. Okay, set boundaries for others. And there's a way to go about this, because obviously if senior leaders are approaching you, or your colleagues are approaching you to do extra work, it's because they see that you get things done. By setting boundaries for others, it's not saying, no, you won't help them. I was talking to one of my coaching clients, I'll just call her Jay, and she ended up working lots and lots of hours. Nearly every day she was working an extra hour or two, and on weekends, and she really felt that she had no work-life balance. And the one phrase that she put up on her notice board, which worked really well for her, is make yourself unavailable. So by making yourself unavailable, she set boundaries. And by that, I mean, firstly, the setting your boundaries for yourself on what time you're going to start work and end work. And when you do end work, it's all systems off. No more phone calls, no more emails, and no more responses to the urgent thing that someone else has asked for you. So making yourself unavailable means that you leave work at the given time that feels right for you. Making yourself unavailable, setting boundaries also means potentially just asking people, if someone comes up to you, and it's a simple strategy. If someone asks you to do a particular task and adds to your workload, because after all, you get stuff done, then ask them what date and time they have that they need this deliverable by, and see if you can work it into the schedule. Instead of dropping everything and all the vital few activities that are really important for your job role, by asking for the priority and the date and time that that particular thing is required, then you've got the option to look at delegating it to other people. So setting boundary for others includes the making yourself unavailable, and then setting a date and time. The other thing that causes us to overwork, and really it still plays into that work, trying harder to prove yourself, is the inability to say no. So often we get lots of interruptions from people throughout the day. We can't say, hang on, I'm a bit busy. You let people interrupt them, and then before you know it, 2 or 3 hours of someone chewing in your ear has wasted away the time that you've got to complete your vital few. So if you're in a job role where people have got into the habit of interrupting you, set the boundary by quite simply just saying, look, I can't help. Is this only I've got 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. And if it's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes, we can talk now. If not, let's make a time in our diaries when we can discuss this further. So that's one of the other simple strategies that my client Jay tried recently, and it really worked well for her. And I knew it would, because it's one of the strategies that I've used time and time again with and encourage my other clients to do. So make yourself unavailable. Just make sure that you're also saying no to the immediate distractions unless you've got 5 or 10 minutes spare, and asking people for the date and time that deliverable is due. So within that, setting boundaries for others, there's actually, I just gave you 3 sub strategies or 3 tactics. So in recap, the reason why trying harder to prove yourself is the worst thing that you can do is that it actually is creates that paradox of overworking, where you think if you just do that one more thing and you'll get on top of your to-do list. In actual fact, what it does is it raises your cortisol levels, your stress levels, and leads to more things. And when you've got raised stress levels, you're triggered, and you'll fall into one of those try harder traps of indecision, perfectionism, procrastination, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you suffer from imposter syndrome, busyness, or self-doubt traps, because you'll have that itty bitty shitty committee going on inside your head, telling you all the reasons why you're not good enough and you don't deserve the job that you have right now. So be very well aware of your vital few activities. They're the 3 to 5 things at work, home, and in life that give you the greatest amount of so they're the 20% that give you 80% of the results. Set boundaries for yourself. That's the easiest one to fix. And then set boundaries for others. So that's it for today. If you want any other tactics or you have any specific dilemma or dramas that you're dealing with right now, don't hesitate to reach out me in the DMs, and I will help you craft a strategy that's just right for you so that you can get crystal clear on the very next step to take. Bye for now.